Alright, so we're starting to get into the good stuff here. If you want to use the scale tool, you want to scale something, you also got the shear tool or the reshape tool. So the scale tool, you're just kind of grabbing it, and you actually never really use this tool because you can just grab your direct selection tool here and grab the corners and scale it yourself, and just hold shift or option if you want it to, scale from a certain point and scale to a certain ratio. And there's also tools up here, which allow you to scale as well. Object transform, and then you have the scale and shear and all that up here. But you can use it down here if you want. Shear just basically means you're kind of making it italic almost in a sense, or you're kind of leaning everything to the right or left or whichever way you decide to lean it. And basically, like in this case, it's in a square shape or rectangular shape, and now it's kind of more of a rhombus shape. So that's just all it does, is it kind of allows you to shear it. So I'm just going to hit Command Z. I'm just going to leave it like that. And you have the reshape tool. So that, I actually never use this, but yeah, I never use this reshape tool, but you guys can look it up if you want to learn more. So basically you have these tools right here, which allow you to kind of mess with different shapes or different paths. So the width tool, you can kind of use it to increase or decrease the width between anchor points, or how thick a line is, for instance, on a path. So if you just click and drag, it kind of, as you can see, it's kind of warping this path so that it's got different variations of width. And that can come in handy if you're making a cartoon or just making a drawing. Fancy lines that you want to look a certain way, floral lines, things like that. Then you got the warp tool. This allows you to kind of warp paths as you go by them. So I'm not really using it that well right now, but there you go. Kind of warps this path here. And all these tools are kind of, obviously they're not the same, but they're just a matter of kind of messing with, shapes and things like that. So here, this is kind of the twirl tool, so it's allowing me to twirl the corners here and make it all crazy looking. Then we got the pucker tool, the bloat tool, scallop tool, crystallize tool, and wrinkle tool. Those all do kind of the same thing, just messing with the outer edges of the path here, making these crazy kind of designs. So if you use it right, it's a really cool tool. But it takes a little bit of skill to get that, to use this in a way that's effective and that's just really artistic, because otherwise you get this kind of goopy mess that's not really useful. Free transform tool. This just allows you to kind of change the perspective of the shape and just kind of mess around with it. Get it to do crazy stuff. Just kind of messing with the perspective there. And this is for touch devices here. Alright, so this is kind of the most important tool, I think, in my opinion. And that is the shape builder tool, because what you can do with this is something I use all the time. But what you can do with this is grab multiple shapes. You can grab multiple shapes here, and using the shape builder tool, you can grab the tool, and you can, right now it's defaulted on a plus sign, and that basically means you are adding shapes together. So let's say you wanted to merge these two shapes so that it looks like they're just one shape. Apologize, it seems like I'm getting interference from somewhere on my microphone. So I apologize for that interference, but let me simplify this. If I just want to select and join together these two shapes, grab my shape builder tool and just click, and it'll kind of turn into that dark red outline, and click and drag, and now what you're getting is these shapes joined together as one shape. So that's very useful when you're trying to make like a cartoon or something and you want to join shapes together to create an eye, or make the face or whatever. Just a very useful tool. And this is similar to the Pathfinder tool right here. Pathfinder tool is kind of like just a way of doing it quickly, like that was the minus front feature. Then you've got intersect, so that creates kind of like, right here where the two cross, it keeps that part. Or you have exclude, which keeps, the opposite, keeps the parts that weren't intersecting. And then you have divide, trim, merge, which does what I just did and, merges it all into one shape. Crop, outline, minus back. So those are like, just kind of shortcut tools. And I think those came along before the shape builder tool. But what the shape builder tool allows you to do is kind of, eye it yourself, because sometimes the Pathfinder tool doesn't join the right parts, and it just allows you to join whatever parts you want. Live paint bucket. These things have to be, as you can see when I'm hovering over them, it says click to make a live paint group. So you have to make these a live paint group before you can use the live paint bucket. And to do that, you just go to Object, Live Paint Make. And now you can use this live paint bucket here to kind of color these in. And if you use your arrows, it'll sift through the different swatches over here for you. And that just kind of makes it easier to color stuff in. You have to have the shape selected in order to color them in, by the way. So this shape isn't selected, so if I click on it, nothing happens. But if I select it, then convert it to live paint, then it'll do all the stuff. And Illustrator has all these rules because it's working off of formulas to make sure everything can be scaled and to make sure everything maintains or retains its quality depending on the medium you're using. So it might be annoying to you at first, but it's very useful the way it does things. Live paint selection, that just allows you to select a live paint object here. So now you have kind of the crazier stuff right here. I don't really use it that much, but I know a lot of people do use it. The people that get serious, real serious with Illustrator, and that is the perspective tool, or the perspective grid tool. And basically what that allows you to do is take shapes and draw them so that they're basically drawn from a 3D perspective. So this is cool if you're trying to make like buildings or something like that. So right now it's drawing on this wall because that is the wall that's selected, but if you select the right one, it'll draw on that wall. And if you select the bottom one, it'll draw on the floor. So now it's on the floor over here. So this is really cool if you're like, once you start getting into the more advanced stuff, it'll allow you to draw like cool buildings and things of that nature. And you got to exit out of it in order to get it to go away. I know sometimes you get it up and you try to do other tools and you're not trying to draw on it anymore, and it can kind of mess with you. So just make sure you click that X to hide the grid. But yeah, definitely a useful tool if you're making like buildings and that kind of thing. So then you have this mesh tool, which is kind of cool if you're trying to make like a really intricate gradient. Basically you can fill the anchor points in with colors and move them around, and that's good for when you have shapes that aren't going to be shaded entirely like with one gradient. We haven't gotten to the gradient tool yet, but we're about to. But basically, if you have something that has a lot of curves and you want it to look like the colors are reflecting with the light a certain way. This allows you to kind of bend the colors, um, you know, using this mesh here to kind of mix the colors all together, and that's something that requires a tutorial in itself. So the next thing is the gradient tool, another very useful tool. So basically, if I click this gradient tool here and click inside of this square that I selected, you got to make sure that you select the square first. Then you come over here to gradient and you can mess with the colors, and that just kind of gives you a gradual, change of colors from one color to the next. So this is going from like a darker orange or a lighter orange to a darker orange. Right now, the reason it kind of fades out like that is because this opacity here is set to 0. You can turn that up to 100, and now it's, both opaque colors instead of having one be transparent. You can change the type to radial, and you can increase the size right here. And I'll do lots of tutorials using gradients, so don't worry if you're not, getting it entirely right now. You can change it back to linear. You can, drag out how far you want this gradient to go. Keep in mind that this is where your dark orange is going to be. This is your light one, and this right here controls where the gradient or the fade begins and ends from one color to the next. So keep that in mind. And that's the gradient tool in a nutshell. Obviously, there's a lot more to this stuff, but I'm just trying to quickly go through the tools here. By the way, this reverses the gradient, so if you want the colors going the other way, just click that. So now you have the eyedropper tool. This is good if you're like, I want to use this color here. You can just click it, and if you want to even keep this color but use a matching color on a different shape, you click it, get the color, click away from it, make sure you're not selecting it basically. Come over here to the color guide. There's that color you selected, and now you can see all the different colors here. Or if you want to do, this star color, same thing, grab the eyedropper tool, click it. It'll bring that yellow color up in here. And definitely a very useful tool. Then you got the measure tool if you want to see how big something is. You can just measure it, and over here it gives you kind of the angle and the size and where it's located on the artboard, all that stuff. You have the blend tool here, which I never use, so I'm actually just going to skip it. Symbol spreader tool. This is pretty complicated, so I'm going to skip it as well, but basically you can create symbols over here, and using the sprayer, it basically just sprays a bunch of instances of that symbol. And symbols are good because they save you space by if you're going to be using the same image over and over again, instead of continuously copying and pasting it, making the file size larger and larger, this keeps the file size minimal because it's only using one instance of this image multiple times. So it's only counts as one thing. So that's the symbol sprayer tool. Column graph tool. These are just all the different types of graphs you can create within Illustrator. So first you select the size of the graph, and then it's going to generate an empty graph here, and then you can kind of fill in the data, and depending on what kind of graph you selected, it'll draw it all. Just click this checkbox, and now you've got data drawn on here, and I'm not going to go into that. Artboard tool. This is a pretty important one. If you click the artboard tool, it basically selects your entire artboard you're working on, and you can change the size of it by either just clicking and dragging, the top if you want it to be bigger, which I do this all the time. If you're working on a composition and you just need it to be bigger, you can click and drag the artboard, and that's basically the area that's going to get exported. So all this stuff you see on outside of the artboard, that's not going to get exported. This stuff right here, it's going to cut it off right there. But yeah, you can grab the artboard tool. You can even draw another artboard if you want two artboards, or you can get rid of one by clicking the X, and you can just kind of mess around with it. You can change the position of it if you want it to be the same size up here. So you have the slice tool. This is like if you're working with an email This is kind of advanced, but if you're working with an email and you want to slice the email up so that only certain parts are clickable and are linked and other parts aren't, this allows you to slice up the composition into different areas. So basically, for instance, if I draw this area, it's going to create these slices. And let's say we just want this slice right here to be clickable. It just kind of allows you to break up your composition into little clickable parts. And it's also good for like working with tables, which is something you got to do when you're working with emails. So it's not really a big deal for you guys right now, but if you get into that business, definitely something that you're going to end up learning. So this is the hand tool, and that kind of just allows you to grab and move your artboard around. If you want to like work up in this corner, this just allows you to move the screen around. Not sure what this print tiling tool is. I've never actually used it. I think that just shows you where your print area would be if you were to print right now. And then you have your zoom tool, of course. Automatically, it's going to be on the plus setting, so you can zoom in just by clicking on whatever area. To zoom out, you're just going to hold Alt or Option on the Mac here. So this is useful if you want to like get more detail, get into something closer and kind of work on it. And I do this all the time, when I'm getting on the more detailed or more complicated parts. It just kind of allows me to zoom in and work on those more detailed parts. So that's going to be it for this tutorial. That's just to kind of give you guys a intro on the tools. There's definitely a ton of tools to use in Illustrator, but that's just kind of a quick demonstration and explanation of what all the tools are and what they do. I'm going to do a lot more tutorials in the future, which will teach you how to draw certain things, which is also going to help you understand the tools a little better while you're drawing. So that's it for my tutorial. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, DMD Premiere. That's my new channel. If you're into GIMP, I also do GIMP tutorials, youtube.com/daviesmediadesign. That's a free channel, so go ahead and subscribe to that if you want to learn GIMP. Otherwise, if you want to learn all the Adobe stuff, including Illustrator, Photoshop, Premiere Pro, After Effects, and more, go ahead and subscribe to DMD Premiere. It's only 99 cents a month, or it's free for the first 2 weeks, and it's even cheaper if you go with the yearly plan. If you're from the US, a yearly plan is $9.99. That's $9.99, which is extremely cheap and awesome. And you'll get a lot of tips from me and a lot of cool tutorials. And for all you people out there wanting to learn graphic design, this is definitely a great channel for you. So thanks for checking it out. You can visit my website, daviesmediadesign.com, or visit us on Facebook, facebook.com/daviesmediadesign, and also on Twitter @daviesmediades. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.